Welcome to 10%. I'm your host, David Perry. Tonight we're going to speak to someone that has, well, if not seen and done it all, certainly written music for it. Welcome to Scrumbly Koldewyn. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now tell me, you've got not a new show, but Vice Palace is called the Last Cockettes Musical.
Correct.
I mean, how many times has this been revived? It reminds me of when Charles Pierce used to say, this is my farewell tour, my fifth and final farewell tour.
The going out of business sale?
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, the Cockettes had officially disbanded when we did Vice Palace, but we just kind of regrouped with who was left for Halloween, because we could not pass Halloween without doing a big show at the Palace. It was just, had become a tradition.
Right. Now, for those uninitiated or too young to have heard of the Cockettes, give us a little bit of San Francisco gay history.
Well, in the 1969, I suppose, Hibiscus appeared on the scene. Some people may remember that famous photograph of a young blonde boy putting a daisy in a soldier's rifle. Well, that was Hibiscus. His hair continued to grow. He came to San Francisco with practically dreadlocks, sort of like a Jesus dressed in festive rags. And he used to get flowers from the flower stalls and just, they throw away at night. He'd gather them all up, slightly wilted. He'd just dance around town with those.
Just because that's who he was?
Yeah, and he was almost like a Pied Piper, and he'd get people in the park and start singing Can't Help Loving That Man of Mine, things like this. And so in New Year's Eve of 1969 to 1970, we all went to the Palace Theater, where he'd organized that we get up on stage and dance to a number. And we went to his commune, all got dressed up, and went and just kind of flopped the number up on the stage.
And this was the birth of the Cockettes?
And that was the birth of the Cockettes, because the crowd went ballistic. They went, oh, what? And at the end they were like crazy.
Yeah.
So
now, did you know that you were, I mean, this is, a leading question. Did you know you were doing something that was going to be then replicated, or did you just think this was a one-off?
Oh, that we were going to continue? I really didn't think of it. Oh, we were so in the moment then,
Now, a lot of the people associated with the history of the Cockettes have gone on to fame, and their names have now become legend. People who worked with John Waters, like Divine and Mink Stoll. Tell us about that relationship, and tell us about John Waters.
John Waters. Okay, well, Divine's actually John Waters' films, but they all starred Divine originally, would play. The Palace Theater, where the Cockettes performed, did midnight shows on weekends. They were famous for their midnight shows and, had a great following. So the Cockettes would do, say, every third week or something, third or fourth week. And the movies that showed actually in the beginning, before the Cockette shows went up, we used to get out of there maybe 4 a.m. sometimes. But the movies that they showed, among them, I'd say 1971 was the Diane Linkletter story, and Multiple Maniacs, and I forget the other one, Mondo Trasho. And they all starred Divine. Well, our crowd just ate them up. I mean, my gosh. It was really the beginning of punk, sort of a transition from hippies to punk. And this is sort of a mix of the two. And, well, pretty soon Divine came out. We all met her at the airport, accompanied by John Waters. And
when she stepped off the airport, was she Divine, or was
she? Oh,
she
she was Divine, and she was Divine from that point on. That is the point. People were so crazy for her in San Francisco that she never went back to being Glenn again. That was the turning point.
Yeah, and so that was 1971. So she and John came out from Baltimore, and what was it like hanging out and partying with John Waters?
Maybe it was 72.
Yeah, but what was it like hanging out and partying with Divine, one of the original gay icons of the era?
Lots of fun.
I bet.
Lots of fun. Just Divine had such wonderful personality of just, yeah, let's party. But there was no, I don't know, there was no sense of, oh, here's a big star. We just all
Well,
had
at that time,
a great
she wasn't a big star. She was kind of an underground star, right?
An underground star, yeah.
And what about John Waters? What was he like?
He was more quiet, a little more subdued, very funny, very devilish.
Yeah, he always looks like he's watching and waiting for someone to do something that he can put in a movie. So have you ever been in one of his films, either as a fictitious, I mean, have you either Scrumbly in reality or someone that you looked and said, wow, that's me, John Waters put in that film?
No, I don't think so.
Now, another person that worked with John and Divine, Mink Stoll.
Yes. Mink Stoll was in the original, along with Divine, was in the original Vice Palace, the Last Cockettes Musical. Now, Divine was, of course, the Lady Divina. Oh, Divina. This is, we're talking Fellini, we're talking Mask of the Red Death, married together. So Divine, the big star, was Divina. Mink Stoll was Vicky, an Italian starlet, what have you, and she sang the original song No Nose No Nook, about the gal in the Northern Pole, rubbing noses took its toll. Too much snorting, too much
Yeah.
Okay. So she did this little tap dance number with tap dancing igloos and so forth.
And what year was this?
This was 1972.
Right.
Halloween of 1972.
So these were the Vice Palace, the Cockettes musical, always opened on Halloween. It was always on
Vice
Halloween.
Palace opened on Halloween. We always had a show on Halloween. We had a lot of other shows as well.
And how long did this tradition continue?
Oh, well, the Cockettes were only around for a couple of years.
Yeah.
2.5 years.
So when did it strike you that we need to resurrect this? And did you ever think that this thing that was so much a part of your youth would be something that you'd return to in later youth?
I suppose I hoped so, because it was a huge sensation. The Cockettes were really big for 15 minutes. And yeah, so when the film, the documentary film, the award-winning documentary film, The Cockettes, came out in 2003, there was a lot of renewed interest.
David Weissman, right?
David Weissman and Bill Weber. And so when the Thrill Peddlers met us, Thrill Peddlers being Russell Blackwood and Jim Totzel.
A local San Francisco performing group.
Yes,
Yeah.
at this wonderful place called the Hypnodrome, kind of a secret little theater. It occurred to them that, well, let's do ridiculous theater. We've been doing some ridiculous theater. They specialize in Grand Guignol, which is French horror theater. Well, horror theater, what follows, but ridiculous theater. And so with this renewed interest in the Cockettes, let's do one of the Cockettes musicals. Okay, we'll do Pearls Over Shanghai. Pearls Over Shanghai ran for 2 years. The second show we did was a pared-down version of Hot Greeks, and the third show is Vice Palace.
Right. Now, the Cockettes, ever since they started, were popular. And, you know, when John Waters started, he was certainly underground. I remember seeing my first John Waters film and thinking, well, God, it's fun, but I don't know if it's art. I mean, I don't think John Waters, and certainly not John Travolta, would ever have thought that Hairspray would be considered art and be a Broadway musical. Did you think the Cockettes then were art, and do you think it's art now, or do you think it's
I
entertainment?
thought it was art in a sense, but we kind of remake our definition of art depending on its relationship to the culture and so forth.
Right. So what is it like composing music for Divine?
I didn't really write songs for Divine specifically, except maybe one called A Nice Time in Town, you know. And it's, you know, Divine had this delivery kind of a, you know, kind of a, you know, she loved Blame It on the Bossa Nova. It's kind of a punch delivery.
She's like a transgender Ethel Merman.
Oh, somewhat.
Yeah, maybe.
Somewhat.
Maybe.
Even more, you know.
In our last few minutes,
fierce.
Tell us specifically about this production. How is it different and how is it the same? And what is the audience going to see?
Well, the original had a lot of non-original songs in it, and so I had to change that. It had to be all original. So I wrote about 9 new tunes for Vice Palace.
Just for this version?
Yeah, this version that we ran it last year. We're reopening now. We took it to New York for just one weekend. We were also at Lincoln Center. We did a whole medley of Martin Moorman, who did the book, He's passed on about 14 years ago. But we did a whole medley of his songs at Lincoln Center, and then we went on to do it at Theater 80 in the East Village, and it was fantastic. Standing ovations every night.
Do you think that the Cockettes, if they were to start now, would have the same impact, or is it because there's this nostalgia for, that whole period, the Summer of Love leading into Stonewall, into the Harvey Milk era? Is it nostalgia that is the reason we love the Cockettes, or would they be hot now if they started again?
I think they'd be hot now starting again. I really do. I think it's almost like Cockettes in a way were before their time. Of course, some things about the Cockettes would be very old school now, but yes, they would definitely make an impact right now.
Right. Tell us, what is your favorite moment in Vice Palace?
My favorite? Oh, there's so many. Is it my solo? No. Oh gosh, I think I love this new song I wrote called "It's Divina," and it's just this big, full-out, musical extravaganza at the top of Act 2.
Something that you wish Divine was still around to do.
Oh yes, yes. We have another show opening called Hot Greeks, which is opening at the end of March.
Great, we'll have you back on to talk about that.
Great.
Thank you. We've been speaking with Scrumbly Koldewyn, composer and friend of Divine, Mink Stole, and John Waters. Next up, we'll be speaking with Mason Davis about his work on behalf of the transgender community. We'll be right back.